Welcome to this video on how to use Dynamic House of Quality, one of the tools in the Smart Culture toolkit. The Dynamic House of Quality is a tool that can help decision makers, in this case stakeholders in a tourism system, to discuss and reach consensus on which interventions to develop for the tourism system and which ones are going to have the most likely optimal impact on stakeholder needs. As such, it is a tool that helps to rationalize decision making in relation to developing interventions for tourism systems, and it helps to make the decision making transparent. This tool is an adaptation from the quality function deployment approach developed for product engineering, which we have developed into a dynamic version that can be used in tourism contexts. So why would you use a Dynamic House of Quality? First of all, you would use it in complex destinations to basically uncomplicate the situation, to make it insightful what is happening and what are the wisest decisions when it comes to developing interventions. It helps you to set clear priorities in developing possible interventions based on their expected impact. It also creates the possibility to, based on those priorities, develop a very clear design brief for the ones that are going to design those interventions. And in the end, you can also use the same Dynamic House of Quality for evaluating the outcomes of the development process. To explain how this House of Quality works in practice, let us take a very simple example. Our challenge is to redesign the chocolate chip cookie. And for a chocolate chip cookie, two types of variables are very important. First of all, the customer needs. What is it that ultimately the customers want from a chocolate chip cookie? Well, they want it to look attractive, they want it to taste good, and they want it to have the right portion size. And the design attributes, so the type of interventions that we could do to improve the cookie, are linked to the color of the cookie, the size of the cookie, and the chocolate chips that we put into the cookie. So let's illustrate how to create a house of quality by doing this for the chocolate chip cookie. On the left side, we start with the customer needs. So we identified looks, the taste, and the portion as the three important customer needs on the left side of the House of Quality. Then on top of the House of Quality, we put the interventions or the characteristics of the design. So color is important, size is important, and the chocolate chips that we put in the cookie are important. And those are three things that we could influence. And the idea is that we are now going to try and find out which is most important. And we do that by first looking at the customer needs and then establishing how satisfied customers currently are and how important the needs are in their eyes. So the looks currently are rated as a 2, which means that there is an improvement room of 8. The taste is currently rated as 2, which also means that it could be improved by 8. And the portion size is currently rated as 7, so that could be improved by 3. And customers value the looks with a 6, taste with a 9, and portion with a 4 when it comes to how important they feel they are. What we then do is multiply satisfaction with importance, and we end up with a number. In this case, 48 for looks, 72 for taste, and 12 for portion. Now, to simplify things, let's translate that into a 5, a 7, and a 1. So those are the numbers that we are going to work with in our House of Quality. Now, color. How much does that influence looks? A lot. So we'll rate that as an 8. Color, how does it influence taste? A little bit, not directly, but if it looks weird, it might taste a little bit less. Obviously, color does not influence portion. Size. It influences the looks, but not as much as the color. Size influences the taste in no way, so that's a 0. And size influences the portion a lot, so that's an 8. The chips that we put into the cookie, they influence the looks to some extent, not as much as the color, but more than the size. The chips obviously influence taste a lot, so that's an 8. And they do have a little bit of an impact on the portion, but not as much. Using these numbers, we can look at what is most important. So 5 times 8 is 40, 7 times 3 is 21, 1 times 0 is 0, and we add all of that, which means that for color we end up with a score of 61. In the same way, we calculate the score for size. So that's 5 times 5, 7 times 0, 0 times 8, adding all those scores, and we end up with 33. And the same for the chips. 6 times 5 is 30, 8 times 7 is 56, and 2 times 1 is 2. We add those scores, and we end up with a total score of 88. And this now tells us that if we want to satisfy the customer needs, we need to look at the chocolate chips that we put into the cookie. That's the most important one, the most important intervention. What we can do with the dynamic house of quality that we have developed for Smart Culture is exactly the same as we've just done for chocolate chip cookies. But instead of customers that buy chocolate chip cookies, we now look at the left side of the house of quality by looking at the various stakeholders involved in a tourism system and what their needs are from that tourism system. And the type of stakeholders that come into play here are residents, tourists, cultural institutions, entrepreneurs, the planet, because we want tourism development to be sustainable, and government, for instance, local government and their ambitions when it comes to the destination. Those are the stakeholders that were identified in this project and for whom we have developed an overview of the type of specific needs that each of these stakeholders have and that you can use in our Dynamic House of Quality tool. We have also looked at identifying the interventions that you could develop. What kind of interventions would be possible to develop for intervening in a tourism system? And in Smart Culture we have developed a set of successful interventions that can be categorized in 4 possible intervention types. Development and innovation of products, services and experiences, to protect, restore and safeguard cultural heritage, to improve the visitor flow, so visitor flow management, and improving community resilience and capacity building. And for each we have identified potential interesting interventions. And then, like with the chocolate chip cookie, what we have created is a way to link the needs of the various stakeholders and how they currently rate the importance of those needs and how satisfied they are with the current situation, to the possible interventions that we could develop for intervening in the tourism system, and that by linking all of that, we can find out which intervention types are likely to have the wanted impact on the tourism system. The expected outcomes of using this tool are that you can prioritize the stakeholder needs and the intervention types that are likely to impact these needs, and that you can actually share this information with stakeholders that are eager to develop these interventions. Which means that this information can be very useful in organizing and planning resources for developing interventions. And obviously this matrix can then also be used at a later stage to evaluate and compare proposals for interventions. The actual house of quality that you can use in a specific situation obviously is context specific, so it depends on the specific intervention. What you see on this picture now is just how complicated it could get, but it doesn't have to get this complicated. As shown with the example of the chocolate chip cookie, we can also bring it down to very understandable, simple dimensions. It's just dependent on how much information we want to take into account in this exercise or this stage of the process. And finally, what is important to know is that a dynamic house of quality is especially useful if you can then combine it with stakeholder mapping, ideation washing machine, or destination design road mapping, all tools that are also available in the Smart Culture Toolkit.